All right, let's start with a Fatiha and a focus away from our daily distractions, center ourselves away from our thoughts, our future mind of projecting and dwelling in the past, and just be in the present. Be now, be in the present. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina as-siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladina an'amta alayhim. غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين الحمد لله رب العالمين. So I want to begin with just going over this meditation. You know, so much of the talk that we attend and the talks that we've been having here have been on overall subjects, overviews. And it's important to drill down to something which is practical, something we can practice, something that we can actually make a part of our life, to imbibe and to raise our consciousness to a higher consciousness. We know in our deen that all of the practices that we do are all designed for that. And if one does those fully and completely, there's nothing lacking in it whatsoever. But at the same time, we're all different, and we all come at this from a different way. How many people there are, that's how many ways there are towards marifa, towards knowledge, towards knowing the self. Nobody has the same path as you. And this is a reflection of Allah's uniqueness. You think of yourself, like Shaifullah has said in the past, that nobody has the same fingerprint. Well, that is a reflection, an echo of the unique. It is a way for us to understand in our relative world, in the relative sense of personal experience, the possibility of a unique being beyond any comparison. And that is the light of Allah Azza wa Jal. And that reality is present within us. It is at the core of our being. And it's the core of every being, and at the core of any of what is perceivable, and that which is beyond perceivable, because its essence is not perceivable, but its traces and its emanations are perceivable within the spectrum of our relative consciousness. So this is where it comes to understanding when the Prophet ﷺ said that man arafu nafsahu faqad arafu rabbahu, that he who knows himself or herself knows their Lord. Meaning that you have within you all of everything necessary to have that knowledge of yourself, your relative self, and rise on that and ascend on that in a transcendent way to begin to sense the transcendent one from which we all came, which is resident within our hearts. So this practice is born out of this manarafu nafsahu, he who knows or she who knows himself knows his Lord. Throughout Sufi history, or you may say, and even beyond that, the knowledge that this contains is not limited to just within the context of the historical appearance of Islam, but has been part and parcel of the enlightened and revealed teachings, prophetic teachings from the very beginning in the Abrahamic line, and as we know, in lines from Buddhism and from Hinduism and from so many isms that we don't even know. It's mentioned that there's 124,000 prophets. And this is a number that is just a number which just means many, 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 many more than we can begin to even count. So many of in the Sufi way, particularly many of the awliya and the shuyukh who have studied the idea of the inner dynamic of perception and how we see things and how how our inward is constructed, that they have come up with 5 basic dynamics that are within the inner senses. Now we all know the outer senses, so the taste and touch and hearing and smelling and feeling. All of these are outer senses which enable us to see the world, experience it on a visceral level. And this is what we have in common with all animals, all in nature, animal nature. This is part of what we call tabi'a. It is our animal nature. But we also have and we have inner senses that have to do with our fitra, our natural inclination to be inclined towards God, towards knowledge, towards self-discovery. And these there are within us. And they in some way reflect the outer senses, but we're not going to go into that today. We're going to go into what are these inner senses and how they impact our lives, and the importance to get to know them, get to experience them on a personal level. And I mean, when I say discover them, to really dive into them, see that in fact, these dynamics, these 5 particular dynamics, are what drives you, what identifies you to yourself and to others over, and they evolve over a period of time. So this meditation is designed to become familiar with them, to taste them, to experience them, not only individually, but as a whole organism, as a whole orchestra or symphony, however you want to look at it, working together, that together they then form this idea of who we think we are as a separate entity, as a separate creature. So if you look at the document that I sent you, I want to first start with the saying of Imam Ali, alayhi salam, because he sums it up so beautifully and so completely, that he says, your sickness is from you, but you do not perceive it, and your remedy is within you, but you do not sense it. You presume you are a small entity, but within you is enfolded the entire universe. You are indeed the evident book, by whose alphabets the hidden becomes manifest. Therefore, you have no need to look beyond yourself. What you seek is within you, if only you reflect. Now here is the key word to everything he said before. And I hope that everybody who hasn't already read this before, read it again and again. But the key to all that he said here is that if only you reflect. Reflect requires a presence and a sensing of these aspects of our self. They don't know themselves by themselves. They know themselves through you know them through your own consciousness. And once you become aware of them, then you begin to understand how you act, how you live, and those things which act as a veil for you, and those things which nourish you towards your realization that everything you need is already within you. So this is the basis of the idea of studying the five senses. So let's go to it. And I want to just underscore these different elements. Most of these are for preparation to begin with. So the first step is ablution. Now, if you're a Muslim, you would do this as you would do wudu, and you would consider this wudu an entree into a state of being. You are considering this wudu as a turning away from your involvement in worldly activities and concerns and sealing yourself with celestial light. When you use the water, it's not just water. That water, as far as we know, came from outside of this solar system. That it is something which is unique and celestial, and it's, at least in its meaning, it's celestial, in that it acts as a purifier and a sealant. And so when you do this wudu, is that you seal yourself from all other concerns and consider that you put yourself in a cloak of light. Now, these considerations, these reflections of, for instance, consider yourself in a cloak of light, this affects your being. That it's not just an intellectual thing. It's not just a purifying thing with water. It's not just a ritual. It's an entree into a state in which you are sealing yourself from everything. And that creates a certain condition within you. Once you have that condition, you go to the second step, which is turn. Now, turn, if you're a Muslim, it means you turn towards Qibla. And we know Qibla is one of the names of Kaaba is Bayt Allah. And we know that the other name, the name of the heart is Bayt Allah. So this turning is a mithal, a metaphor of turning towards your true self. When you turn away from everything, you turn to the ultimate mirror, which is Kaaba. Or if you don't have Kaaba, let's say, and if you're a seeker interested in this meditation, you turn towards what you conceive to be of the highest nature. And that is the imagery, and the metaphor is your own path that you're on. But in every path, in every way, there is this element of turning towards the direction away from your normal, so-called normal involvement in life, and towards your truth, towards the light, towards the mirror of your heart, which is Bayt Allah, is where the light of Allah is. So you turn to that signpost, I put it here, and mirror. So you reflect in the true nature. And that takes away by itself any other illusion, because once you're you're in the mirror of the Kaaba, in the mihrab of that turn towards it, then all else fades away. There's nothing else. So you're in now, sealed and turned towards the mirror of your true self. Then after that is when you're ready, you prostrate. Now prostration is something which I put in here because it has to do with this in the context of the five senses, the inner senses, and by inference, it has to do with also the outer senses, is that here when you do prostration, is that you are putting your five outer senses down, and you actually, when you do that, your heart is above your head, and you are in a metaphoric, in a physical present way, metaphorically, physically resembling the submission of the outer senses. And there can only be this tasting of the transcendence when the outer senses are submitted. This is when the outer senses are submitted, the inner awakens. So this is a dynamic which is present in all pathways, all prophetic teachings, and in our way, if you're a Muslim, it's perfectly represented in the practice of the prayer. Keeping in mind that every single practice in the prayer, every move in the prayer is again an entree into a divine metaphor of how the different elements in the universe work, and that the ultimate goal, the ultimate purpose of the prayer is that sajda. It is where you submit completely the outer senses and awaken in you the tasting of the transcendence. So this again lifts you to a higher state of consciousness. So ablution, sealing yourself, turning towards your heart, towards the mirror of your heart, and prostrating, giving up entirely the relative experience of self. And then when you finally have that condition, or approach that condition, then sit quietly, and approximately I wrote 5 to 10 minutes, and repeat a formula, La ilaha illallah, or whatever that you have been given, or that you know, or you feel an affinity or resonance with. All the names lead back to the one who has the source of that name. So it doesn't really matter in this case. It's better to use the names that are only specific to Allah. And there are about 12 or 15 that are very specific to him. And if you don't have that list, I'll send it to Sarah. It was collected by Dr. Adnan Adani a week or two ago. And it's brilliant. It just breaks down all the names and how they refer to the different, starting from relative and shared attributes to that which you cannot share, like eternal. You are not eternal, only Allah is eternal. There's about 15 or 16 of them, I can't remember right now, and everyone should have a look at this. So when you are in that state and you have relaxed and for 10 or 15 minutes in your practice, you can also do the elongated name of Allah, which is universally, it's a universal practice. It is where, for instance, in the Hindu tradition, they recite Om, and in Buddhism, there's similar mantras that have this extended invocation of one syllable or two syllables. And this is this, we do it, if you're Muslim and you've been involved in Sufi teachings, you'll find that you may have experienced this before. And it goes, let me just, for the record, put it out here, is that it is where you imagine on the horizon, like looking out over an ocean, you imagine the name of Allah out in front of you. And the idea is to look at it, imagine it using your ability to imagine, and then elongate the name of Allah, which I'll do here in a moment, and bring it towards you until you become enveloped by it. And it goes like this. Most of you know it, but I'll just, like I said, for the record, put it here. And you breathe again and say the name, and you do. And it's amazing that this practice with breath and with presence, how your mind, it quiets the mind, quiets the body, and brings you into a state of higher consciousness and higher reflection. So here we will just go into the meat of the practice of meditation on the five inner senses. And if you have any questions, please chime in. If you something that you don't quite understand, let's open it up and unpack it together. This is very important if you're going to do this to understand it clearly. You may want to take time to read it on your own and go into it. So the meditation of the five inner senses, say to yourself quietly the name, the first inner sense, which is called the Hiss al-Mushtarik. And the Hiss al-Mushtarik it means the combining self. It means that sense that combines all of your senses, both your outer senses and your inner senses, to work in a harmony, in a symphony that communicates to yourself, in a holistic way, your experience of the world, of your life, and so on. That there's a seamless thread together, sewn together, all these different elements, which again, like your five outer senses and your five inner senses, that produce a holistic experience of yourself. And in this particular meditation, what you want to do is contemplate it. Consider that you have all these different senses, both inner and outer, yet they all work together and they produce this being, which is yourself, in all its complexities and experiences, memories, feelings, attitudes, identifications, sensory feeling, all of it working together to produce this relative being, relative consciousness. The idea here is to sense this function, to look at it. Looking at it is like bringing your consciousness to it. Rather than it just carrying on mechanically, you awaken in the moment and observe this phenomena. So that's the first part. And you can dwell there until you feel that you've gotten as far as you could to, at that moment, at any particular time you do this meditation, that you can move on. Then you say to yourself, the khayal. Now, the khayal is the ability to imagine, the ability to image. It's the ability in your consciousness, your relative consciousness, to perceive form, to see the world as solid, to see the world around you, the nature of everything. That somehow through this facility of the imaginal center that you have, you're able to put form to the world and the universe around you. Ultimately, everything in the world, including yourself and the universe, is a manifestation of the names and attributes of Allah. But yet you experience the names and the attributes of Allah through the imaginal, which is form. So when you see a mountain, you're looking at it, your perception, your dynamic perception, khayal, sees it as this mountain. We can all agree what a mountain looks like. But in another way, that mountain is a reflection, a manifestation of Allah's majesty and beauty and firmness and all the things that it finds its root is in. It's a manifestation of so many names and attributes coming to show you that it's a mountain. Your khayal is also when you look at a tree and you think of how the tree just reaches up and goes towards the sun, so that it has this incredible photosynthesis that goes on. It's gripped and held into the earth. You look at that and it's teaching you something. It's an ayat. It's saying something to you. You look at the sun. You look at a baby at the breast of a mother. You look at an animal. It tells you something about yourself and the universe. Everything is speaking. Everything is Allah's articulation of himself through his divine names and attributes. And you're able to perceive all of that through the khayal. Without the khayal, you can't experience any of that. An example is that you can, in a moment, if I say to you, imagine a dog with the head of a fish, instantly you can see that. Because your ability to put imagery together is infinite and was so wide-reaching that there's just no end. But this is the nature of the khayal. Now, in a way, now we're kind of going into almost like a vortex. We've experienced this concept and tasting of the Hiss al-Mushtarak, which is the combination of all the senses working together. And now we're digging down into it, where that part of the dynamic of that combination and combining is this sense called of the khayal, which we are able to then give form to the outer world. But now, if you're satisfied in your meditation and contemplation with the khayal, then you move on to the wahima. Now, the wahima is that which gives meaning to the experience. Now, wahima is created initially as for everyone. We share that when we're born, we're tabula rasa, where there's no original sin, there's no, we're completely a blank slate. And as we live, even before actually we come into this world from the womb, we experience biological and chemical experiences that are not conscious, but they are there and they make up who we are. And then when we come into this world, things we hear, taste, see, the state of our parents at the time that we're conceived, the time that we're in gestation, the time that we're born, what the circumstances we're born in, the status of our family, your education, everything is there feeding this and giving meaning to what we're experiencing through the chayal and working in harmony through the Hissel Mushtarik. We are now, all this meaning and identification is now grown and maturing within us through the sensory, through the outer senses and through the inner senses. And this is a place where I would suggest that you take some time and dive into the contemplation that all of what you feel and your experiences and so on that make you up have all been because of this ability. And all of this ability is contained within the next sense, which is the hafida. And I'm looking at the letter I sent you all. I left out that paragraph. I'll send you a new one. It's before we get to the mufakkara. There is the hafida. The hafida is the collective memory that is within you, where all the meanings that you experience through life is stored, where everything that you've experienced of meaning, of physicality, of combined experience is stored within this hafida. And that is a place where, again, you need to reflect on and to taste and confirm to yourself that this is actually a reality within you. It's the same with all of these different senses, and why we're doing this, so that you can confirm that you have these dynamics working within you. Then we come to the mufakkara. The mufakkara is the reflective self. It is like if you were to hold the Hissel Mushtarik in front of you, and then the khayal and the wahima and the hafida, the mufakkara is the reflective and conscious awareness of all of these aspects of yourself. It is what looks without judgment. It looks and experiences the reality of all of these dynamics within you. And here you want to dwell in this contemplation longer than any of the other ones, because it's in here that you embrace with your consciousness and see all these dynamics working together. But there's also a sixth type of sense that is born from this hafida. And that sixth sense is that you become aware that you're aware of all of these things. And that awareness that you're aware of all of these dynamics is the entree into higher consciousness. This is where you start to taste the dissolution and the disidentification. It's probably not a word, but can't find the word for it. Of that you are all of these things. That you recognize them, but in reality, these are only dynamics of a relative experience of the self. When you have this mufakkara, reflective, when you're contemplating that, and then you have this dynamic behind that of being aware that you're aware of all of this, then you begin to become aware that you're more than all of these things, all of these doors that have led to this identification of self and the relative self, that it is a consciousness which is transcendent and beyond. And you can't claim it, it's not yours because it's watching you. It is seeing you, and you sense it. This is the idea of the being entirely in the moment, in the presence of Allah, in the Hadrat al-Rabbani, in the presence of your Lord. It is not. It is that tree that Musa went to, and it was on fire of light, but it didn't burn it. It was that light set within a niche, neither of the east or the west, which is beyond time and beyond space. It is that which is you are sensing and experiencing, hopefully in the contemplation of this, of your inner and outer senses. So this is what I wanted to share with you today about it. Now, I wrote an afterthought about this, is that when you do things like this, when you have regular, and this should become a regular practice, and even if you, let's say you don't do this practice, whatever practices that you do, it is better to do a little bit in a constant way than a lot, or rather a lot in an inconsistent way. You know, like a lot of times amongst us, we used to do weekly or bi-monthly gatherings of dhikr. Dhikr is wonderful, but it can become a cathartic experience rather than something which builds into a state of being. It could become something we do to sort of let go, and we feel refreshed. But if we don't do something on a constant basis, it becomes more of a cathartic experience rather than something which builds and creates a sense or a beingness within you. All right, so that's that. I did leave out the Hafida. I think when I was copying and pasting, I left that. I'll send that to Sarah, and she could send it. Are there any reflections or questions about what we've looked at tonight?
I have a question,
Hmm.
Mustafa. And is this something different than like, how we pray? Can we combine this with our prayer, our salat, I mean? Or is it something like we should do this separately?
Well, it is something that you would do as a separate issue. But having said that, you can't really separate it, because in so many elements in the prayer, they're connected to many of these issues here. Again, when you do prostration, so you're taking your outer senses in a metaphoric way. The prayer shows that you put them down on the masalla, and when you put them down, it is a metaphor of giving up the outer senses, so that you have a transcendent experience. You move towards your inner being. Remember, when you do sajda, you say, Subhana Rabbil A'la. A'la is the name of Allah, which is high beyond our ability to comprehend. So it's clear that practice is to prepare you for a mirage, like the Prophet ﷺ said, "As-salat al-mirajat al-mu'min." So, the prayer itself has these traveling through different stages, and it's the same in what we're doing here. It is but this is to do more specifically with something you can do outside of the ritual of salat, and come to understand by unpacking these different dynamics of self, you'll come to understand how you work, how you can visualize, that you are a combination of these inner senses, and it gives you a sense of being more than that, of being beyond the inner senses. Same thing as the salat. The salat, it takes you into a journey beyond yourself. As you know, we've talked about it. When you stand up for salat, it begins with the same elements. You seal yourself, you find your qibla, you turn towards the ultimate mirror of the heart, which is Kaaba. You then prostrate yourself, which is the giving up of all of your sense of your relative self to the transcendent experience. And when you do the takbir, for instance, you raise your hands, and when you say Allahu Akbar, you're expressing at that point the unknowable greatness of Allah, and you pull the curtain back of the relative experience and enter into a transcendent perception as much as possible, given what Allah gives you at that moment that you are doing that. So yes, you'll find everything. All these things are connected. There's nothing disconnected here. It is all connected. Did you mean that? Did that answer your question?
It did answer my question. Yes, definitely. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that when we are doing salat, should we do all these steps as well to be more focused? Because I found this relationship, and I found it very useful when we do salat, because normally I am not very focused, but if I do all these steps and I think about all of the steps, I think it would help to have more focus when we do our salat as well.
Absolutely, it's true. Your salat is, in a way, everything you do in life is preparation to the miraj, the potential of the salat al-mirajat al-movement. That if you're just busy in life and identified, with your work and your family and this and that, and then you look at your watch or you hear the adhan and it's time to pray, and you're in a state of anxiety and worry or whatever, and then you try to do all this, it is more difficult to focus and seal yourself and turn in the profundity and the power of what we're talking about. If you enter it, in a state of agitation, it's not going to happen. It's going to be difficult. But if you prepare yourself in your life in general, if you say Bismillah before you eat your food, and you really mean it, and you do your meditative practices to prepare yourself, so when you then come to salat, you're already in a good state. You're already in a vibrating in a higher consciousness. And of course it will enhance and make your salat more meaningful and deeper than if you were not doing things like this. This is what our whole life should be like. I mean, everything we do, everything we're given in life, our relationships, our business, our family, everything is a challenge to either become identified in the moment with your roles as a father or a wife or a sister or a doctor or whoever you think you are, and to challenge you to look at it and then see beyond it. See that that is only your relative role in this world, that beyond that, there is something which is forever within you, and forever within the person you're with, and foreverness with every single being in the world, that within those Every being is the light of God within them. So all the things that we do in life are all there as a challenge to awaken you. Either you get identified with them and you think this is who I am, and this will result really in pain and suffering. And if you see through it and not become too identified with it and relax into what you know is the light within your heart, then it's not the same. It's not the same. You know, the salat is the doorway, the keys to your fulfillment, ultimate fulfillment. So, is there anything else?
So if nobody has any other question, I have another question.
Go ahead, Sarah.
So I didn't quite understand the difference between khayal and wahm.
Khayal is the actual the ability to imagine. Like if I said to you right now, I'll give you again another example. If I said to you, see the moon in your imagination, can you see the moon?
Yeah.
Now, what does it make you feel like when you see the moon? What does the moon mean to you?
No.
You don't have to answer, but you see,
Yeah.
if you see the moon with your in your ability to imagine, that's one thing. But how it makes you feel and what it means to you, this is where it's born from wahm. Like for instance, have you ever had an experience where someone really hurt you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or they insulted you in some way, and you 2-3 years pass, you don't see them, then all of a sudden they walk in a room, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you feel the same thing again, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Has that happened to you?
Yes.
Yes. Everybody knows it's happened to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that is an example of these dynamics. Your hissa mushtarak is put you in that room, and you're sensing and you're living and you're behaving as though you're an individual, a separate being. Your khayal is specific to seeing the physicality of the room itself and everything in it. But the wahima is what gives it meaning. So this man walks in or woman walks in, and you feel, that anger or that disappointment, whatever it is, that's coming from your wahima. You've given it that meaning, and that meaning is stored in your hafida.
Mm-hmm.
And the hafida is can only be purified for the meaning that you've carrying around all this time by your mufakkara, by seeing it without any judgment.
Mm-hmm.
That your consciousness awakens. This is mufakkara. When you witness your wahima wreaking havoc in the moment when you're seeing something physically in front of you that's making you feel a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
So when you wake up in that moment and you laugh at it because you recognize that it's just some habit, a pattern that you've kept within you in this way, that then you can become unidentified with it because you're more identified with your consciousness, with your mufakkara, and again with this other sixth sense of that which is beyond. Because if you go to that which is beyond in any circumstance, in any situation, then it's all fine. Then it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is, it's like if Sayyidina Isa was on the cross, right? Let's just say as an example, whether you believe he was crucified or not, that's another issue. But he said to when all the people around him did this thing to him, right? He turns to Allah and he says, it is to you I placed myself in your hands. That is the state of entering into mufakkara and into higher consciousness. He can't do anything about the world, the situation, like Imam Hussein. He was there. There was nothing he could do. He knew this was it, but he was the greatest of shahids. Why? Because his heart and his celebration was, he knew his destiny, and he took solace and courage and ascension in that realization that it's Allah's decree. And he had that consciousness of Allah's decree within him. So this is how we come to understand who we are and the possibilities that we have. Once you do this, I mean, we'll go more and talk about it over time, but I would start doing it if you're interested in this method and this way of developing higher consciousness and understanding, that then we can unpack it more as we experience things through it. But this is it. Does that answer your question?
Yes, definitely. So is Hafida same as Sadr?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
So is Hafida same as Sadr? Sadr, it's a word that we have in Quran. For example, Hazrat Musa says that قال رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني.
What's the meaning of sadri in the Quran in that context? Do you remember?
I don't know, but I felt a connection between
Let's have a look at that.
Okay.
We'll have a look at that. Why hafida is is memory. Like, for instance,
memory.
When someone memorizes the Quran, they're called a hafiz.
I see.
Right?
Okay, so it's
different. From the same root. It means this ability, this dynamic within you to know.
I see.
Store memory, to have it is like a storehouse of memory, which contains all the meanings that you've given, and through you're interpreting your experience of your imagery and of the combination of your senses in your experience of life. All these work together in one dynamic, but they have very specific centers of gravity that you can understand, so and how they work together.
Okay, I think it's something different then, but I did understand that. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Very welcome. Anything else? All right.
So the interesting there is that Hafid also means protection. So when we remember knowledge, we're protecting the knowledge.
Yeah, there's no doubt that these words have multiple meanings, and that knowledge being protected, it is if you imbibe that knowledge and imbibe the memory of that knowledge, and you are the conduit of that knowledge, then you are the holder of that, and you benefit from it, and others benefit from it, inshallah. All right, anything else?
I do have a quick question.
Yes.
Last week you spoke about the 3 different kinds of knowledge. So the knowledge that someone else can give you, the knowledge of your own experience, and then the knowledge of being, right? Or of your own observation is the second one, and then the knowledge of being. I'm trying to kind of understand how what we've talked about tonight overlies that explanation of the 3 different kinds of knowledge.
That's there could not have been a better question.
Oh, good.
Perfectly, it's perfect. It perfectly goes with what we talked about tonight. The three knowledges are ilm al-yaqeen, ayn al-yaqeen, and haqq al-yaqeen. Some Sufis will say then there's haqq al-haqq, right? But let's not go there right now. We'll just say the ilm al-yaqeen, ayn al-yaqeen, and haqq al-yaqeen. Ilm al-yaqeen is that someone tells you you have 5 inner senses. And ayn al-yaqeen is that you start doing this meditation so that you confirm that you have 5 inner senses. And when you reach the mufakkara and higher reflection of awareness of being aware, you've reached haqq al-yaqeen, which is you then are recognize and imbibe and acknowledge this reality that is your being. So yes, ilm al-yaqeen is informational knowledge. Someone says to you X, Y, Z. Ayn al-yaqeen is you prove it for yourself with your experience, your own experience. And haqq al-yaqeen is you become that which you sought. You become the resultant of the ilm al-yaqeen and the ayn al-yaqeen. You become the resultant, which is haqq al-yaqeen, the truth of certainty in it. Does that answer your question?
Yes. So that mufakkara, and forgive me for my pronunciation.
The mufakkara.
Okay, you say it. That entails an awareness and a dissociation, right, from the identification with the experience.
Yes.
Okay.
There's a reflective, unjudgmental consciousness, awareness. It is seeing what you are witnessing. He is the witnesser. It is the reflector. Yeah. And then behind that was what is another sense, which is really it's not really a sense. It's at the, there's an ayah in the Quran in Surah Al-Najm, and it's where the Prophet is on the I think it's on not the Miraj, but anyway, he's ascending. Sorry, it's the what did you say, Anjum?
I didn't say anything.
Oh, sorry, I heard. Anyway, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he goes to the Shajarat al-Muntahar, as it's called in the Quran. The Shajarat al-Muntahar is the lote tree of the furthest limit. It is where its meaning is that he goes to the edge of creational reality, of the relative world. And in that ayah, Jibril, the angel of revelation, asks him, "Can I go with you?" And the Prophet said, "No, you cannot. From here on, this is as far as you can go." Meaning, in a sense, that the angel Jibril, his creation was limited to that point of the Shajrat al-Muntahar. And then the next ayah says, and it says, "And we brought him 2 bows' lengths and revealed to his heart what we revealed. And the heart did not lie by what it saw." So this is in a way, a reflection of this meditation, that you're taken to a point where you understand where creational experience to the edge of creational experience, where all of creation comes to a point where you are challenged to go further beyond just the experiential world. And all the things that are up to that point, all the relative understanding of self and so on, one leaves behind and leaps into what Allah says, 2 bows lengths of nearness. 2 bows lengths is so close, it's the same.
Okay.
And then he says, and we reveal to his heart what we revealed. And what that was revealed is not spoken about, is not said clearly in any kind of articulation. It is left in a way to appear ambiguous, but it's not just because that way. It's because it cannot be described. He entered into such closeness to the reality that there was no difference between himself and reality. So in a way, this is what happens when you, in a degree, that you become aware of how creation comes about in the combination of the Hissa Mushrik, how the Khayal you create the creation around you. Your experience of the universe is entirely your own. You are the imaginable. You are the imaginable. And all the things that you think about, all the creation and everything, it comes from your experience of meaning that you've put in throughout your whole life, living your life. And it's all in you in a place called the Hafida, collected within you. And it's all, you become aware of it all through the reflective consciousness, mufakkara, which then takes you to the idea of the Shajrat al-Muntaha, where you are aware, that you're aware that you are aware that you're aware, and you cannot, that's an indescribable state. So this meditation is a reflection of that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I look forward to getting the notes that you'll send through Sarah.
I'll send it to Sarah, and also please, I apologize about leaving that one very important part out. I'll put it in, so I'll send to Sarah the complete one that includes the Hafida, the Hafida.
Okay.
All right. Alhamdulillah. Then inshallah, if we're here and still alive, and we'll meet again inshallah next week. Say a Fatiha. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim. Sirata alladhina an'amta alayhim. غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Salam.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much.
Thank you.